Inside this first episode of Outsourcing Live, I'll be sharing with you my story on how I got my business outsourced and how you can too. And towards the end of this episode, I'll be revealing what to expect in the next podcast. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Outsourcing Live podcast, where you will learn to build a virtual team to run your business. And now, your host, Tyrone Shum.
Woohoo! We've just arrived to the first Outsourcing Live podcast. And thank you so much for coming on to listen to this first podcast. Well, what I like to do is just to give you an overview of what's going to be inside this first podcast, because the fact is that a lot of people who've been following me have been asking me to provide a specific podcast on outsourcing. And I have mentioned it in the past that I would do it. And now that I finally come around to it, I thought it would be a good idea to start the first podcast with an introduction on what's going to be happening over these podcasts. That way you can know what to expect, and also too, just to get an overview of what's going to be up and coming in terms of outsourcing type of information. Now, before I do jump into it, what I want to do is to give you an overview of what's going to be inside this particular podcast. And the first thing I'm going to be sharing with you is an introduction about who I am. So that way it gives you an idea of what my story is and also what I've been up to. And if you don't know me, this is really just a background story of how I came and stumbled into outsourcing. Also, I want to share with you an introduction of what outsourcing is and also the definition of it and what it means to me. That way we both can align on exactly what outsourcing means. I'll also give you a format of the show, so that way you can know what to expect in every single show or every single podcast I'll be broadcasting out live. And then lastly, I want to share with you why I'm going to be hosting this show and what it really means to me. So for the people who know me, I've had a blog at tyronshum.com, and that's been very successful. It's mostly been a video blog, and I've got a YouTube channel that has over 100,000 views on it. And a lot of people come to me to seek advice on about outsourcing. Well, my story for outsourcing wasn't as pretty as that. Obviously, I've had a lot of tremendous success just from teaching people how to outsource, but my story going back started out quite simple. I was pretty much an ordinary person. I live in Sydney, Australia. I live in a modest home, and also too, I run a modest business. But when I first started, I was working full-time, as most people do. Straight after uni, I finished uni doing a Bachelor of Computer Science from UNSW. And after doing that, I decided to go into real estate because I thought real estate would be a good area to learn how to become a good salesperson, learn how to do real estate. And I had a lot of interest in real estate back then, but since then I've moved away from it, even though I still own property, but I've moved on to it and focused on internet-based business. Now, what really got me into internet-based business and also outsourcing was my first internet-based business, which was called Dragon Boating. It was actually called Dragon Boat Ventures, and you can still find it. It's at dbv.com.au. And my story goes back into when I first started dragon boating as a sport. I didn't do it as a business at first. I started dragon boating as a sport in Sydney, and I was competing quite heavily with all the other clubs and the teams nationally and also across Australia-wide. Now, for the people who don't know what dragon boating is where you have 20 people sitting inside a boat and paddling down a river and competing against each other. And usually you've got about 5 or 6 people, or 5 or 6 boats, I should say, competing each other. And this is a very, very popular event that happens also too during Chinese New Year, which is roughly usually towards the beginning of the year, around about February time. And it's where people just race down each other and also potentially can win a prize. Now, dragon boating is very, very popular across the States and also Europe as well, and has taken off quite tremendously over here in Australia, even though it's been around for many, many decades, or many centuries, I should say. Anyway, what happened was I was introduced to dragon boating by a friend, and I got quite heavily committed into it, and I really, really got involved in the sport. And it was an awesome sport because the fact is I got to do fitness, and also too I got to socialize and have a really good time as well. Though when you start to compete quite heavily and training 3 or 4 times a week, it becomes pretty serious, and that's what I was doing. But the thing was that dragon boating was still at its early stages in terms of its technology and its equipment. And there were a lot of people still using the old paddles that were made out of wood, and they were really heavy. And I discovered that you could buy carbon fiber paddles from the States and over in other countries as well. And the thing is that those paddles just weigh a fraction of the weight of those wooden paddles. Now, what happened was I really, really wanted one of these paddles because I knew it could increase my performance, and also too, it could increase the speed at which I could paddle faster. Obviously, for any elite athlete out there, you want the best equipment, and that's what I really, really wanted. And at first I was thinking, okay, it wouldn't cost too much. I'd call around and find out. So I called up to suppliers overseas, and I found out the paddle would cost about $300. And I said to them, how much would it cost to send it over? And they said to me, roughly about $280. And I said, what? It blew me away. It cost me almost $300 to buy the paddle, plus $280 to ship the paddle across. That's just for one paddle. It's like $600 just for a piece of a paddle. And I've never paid that much ever for a piece of equipment in my life. So I thought, all right, I'm going to be a little bit ingenious and come up with a creative idea. So I spoke to a lot of the people in my club and said, would you be all interested in getting a paddle, the same one that I want, which is this carbon fiber paddle? And also the word got around that I was going to be ordering some paddles as well. So they all said, yep, let's go in. Got some people together. They paid for it. And interestingly enough, when I ordered about, I think it was 30 to 40 paddles, I found that I actually could ship over that many paddles and also have that many people paying me for it. And interestingly enough, when I imported these paddles and distributed out, I found out they had actually made some money on it, which covered the cost of my own paddle. So I thought, I could turn this into a little business, and which is what I did. I ended up becoming the exclusive distributor for all the Dragon Boat products all across Australia, particularly the paddles and all the equipment that related to it. And that was where my first internet-based business started. Now, I quit my job when I was starting to succeed in this business, and it did really well. I was making quite a bit of money, but the problem was that I was spending 60 hours a week just running that business. 60 hours a week. So I thought to myself, I was earning a good income as well, working full time, but I was working much less hours. And interestingly enough, when I started running my own business, I worked a lot more than I had ever been. And this is where it came into the story of where I stumbled across Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week. If you've heard of Tim Ferriss wrote the famous book, The 4-Hour Work Week. If you haven't read the book, I'd highly recommend it. And he shows you inside his book how he turned his working hours of like ridiculous hours of like 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day into working only 4 hours a week. And he learned that through using outsourcing and also automation. So that's where my story came into about, was that I read that book, and from there I was really, really keen to apply it to my business. But the thing was that Tim didn't share about how he did it. He only shared what he did, but he didn't share exactly how he did about outsourcing and the ins and outs of it. And it took me probably almost 6 months to be able to find out how to outsource properly in order for my Dragon Boat business to allow me to work less. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a business which could generate more money for me, at the same time allowing me to work less and less in the business. So after about 6 months or so, implementing all the things that I learned about outsourcing, dibble-dabbing and trial and testing and making a lot of errors along the way, I finally succeeded, and I reduced my hours from about 60 hours down to about an average of 10 hours a week working the Dragon Boat business. And that's where my story of the outsourcing story comes about, was that I really, really turned my business around and it made a huge, huge difference. Now, a lot of people were wondering how I did it, so that's where I started sharing about it online, how I went about it. And if you go back to all my videos, you'll find that that's all the things that I did, and I even share a majority of it inside there. Yeah, so that's who I am. I'm a guy from Sydney. I'm just an average person. I didn't go to school to learn about business. As I mentioned, I studied computer science at the University of New South Wales, and yeah, I just came out with pretty much just an ordinary degree, and I just went into real estate to learn how to sell, but I didn't know anything about business, and that's where I had to learn all these things myself. So basically you could say I self-taught on how to run a business, how to be able to manage and outsource my business, and also to work or create the lifestyle that I want. And that's a little bit of background about me. And you'll find that I'm a down-to-earth type of person. I enjoy sharing my story, and I also enjoy sharing and helping others as well to be able to help them succeed at whatever they choose to do with outsourcing as well. All right, well, that's my story there. And what I wanted to jump into now is to give you an understanding of introduction of what I define as outsourcing and what it means to me. Now, outsourcing can mean a lot to other people. lot of large companies out there outsource currently to India, to the Philippines, and they outsource a lot of their telemarketing and also their phone services and all those customer support kind of things. We can talk about that as well, but in my definition of outsourcing is to be able to hire people from the Philippines and be able to set them up so they can run your business at a lower cost than you would be able to do it locally, and also freeing up the time for you to do other things that you enjoy in your life. That's my definition of outsourcing. And I'll talk a little bit more about it for the people who are solo entrepreneurs or who are entrepreneurs out there running up to medium-sized businesses. This is probably the lifestyle change or just to free up time so that way you can focus on other more important things in the business. So over the course of this Outsourcing Live podcast, I'm going to be sharing with you the strategies, the tips, and the information about how to be able to go about outsourcing the way I've done it. And everything that I share with you will be real-life case studies. I'll even get guests on the line to be able to share their case studies and also their experience of outsourcing. But a majority of it will be from my experience and from what I've discovered and shared with others. All right, so that's the introduction of outsourcing. What I want to share and tell you now is all about the format of the show, what's going to be happening over the podcasting, the Outsourcing Live podcast. For most of you, most of the podcasts probably run for about an hour, up to an hour or so, but what I want to try and do is keep it up to about 35 minutes in length. That's my whole goal, is to keep it short and sweet so that way you can get jam-packed information in there, but also actionable steps that you can take away. And furthermore, I'm going to be releasing my podcast out every week, roughly on a weekly basis. And it'll usually be at the same time on my blog. And also too will be released out through iTunes as well. Furthermore, the aspects of the things that I'll be covering is obviously going to be all about outsourcing, from finding virtual staff to hiring virtual staff, all the way to managing them as well. And I'll also share with you a lot of tools and tips that I've learned over the years for about outsourcing. Excuse me there, I just took a sip of water. All right. And furthermore, I will be sharing with you a lot of different things that I've done in terms of case studies as well. So I'll have obviously a guest from time to time, or you'll just hear me speaking into the microphone just as I am doing right now. Now, when I do have a guest online, I'm going to be getting them to share with you their specific story on how they went and outsourced their business, how they succeeded with it, and also what things they did that worked for them. And usually at the end of the show or end of the interview, I'll ask them an actionable tip that they learned that they can recommend for you to do, that you can take away and action in your business or action in your life for whatever you may do. And we'll try to make it as simple and as effective as possible. So the whole goal is for you to be able to implement the things that we share. And one last thing as well, this is something that I found really, really powerful. And at the end of every podcast is I'll be sharing with you a resource or tool that you can use as well that could be related to the podcast feature segment that we talk about, or it would be something that I've just recently discovered. And to make it even easier for you is that I'm going to post onto YouTube, onto the Outsourcing Live YouTube channel, a how-to video as well to back up the resource to show you exactly how it works. Because it's great to share with you a resource, but then, you might not know how to use it as well. So I will eliminate all those kind of little things that you might not know. And that way you can just hop onto the YouTube channel, watch how to do it, and then just take that tool and access that resource as well. Okay, now I've talked about the introduction of myself, what outsourcing is, and also the format of the show. What I want to share with you now is why I'm hosting this show. One of the main reasons, there's actually two reasons. The first reason is really to add to the brand of Outsourcing Live. Outsourcing Live is going to be designed to help entrepreneurs to outsource their business and also to be able to bring the resources together in a very simple and easy to understand way. And what I want to do is to really leave a legacy for people to remember me as being the outsourcing guru who helped them succeed. I have built a strong brand around that. People know me as being the outsourcing guru, and they have come to ask me a lot of questions about this area, and I've done my best to try and provide the right information and as accurate as possible. So what I wanted to do is just really to add to the brand of Outsourcing Live, and that's really a selfish reason for myself. But at the same time, what I want to do is to be recognized for that. And this is the second part and the second reason why the show exists is I'm really, really here to help you as well too. Because what I believe is the more I'm able to help people, the more people that can learn from what I've done, the more they can teach other people as well. Because I believe in the effect of passing on. And I know that if you can learn something and you can teach others as well, and then that's a great thing because you're really just passing it on and helping others as well. Now, if you've seen a lot of my videos on YouTube, you'll see that I don't hold anything back. You'll see if you search for under outsourcing under my name, Tyrone Shum, you'll see a lot of the outsourcing videos that I talk about as how to step by step. And at the end of each video, I don't even ask for anything. All I do is just share with you exactly how I've done it and how you can implement it to your business as well. So that's really what this whole show is really about, is for you. The whole goal is for you to be able to take away actionable steps, information that's going to be practical and useful, and furthermore also to be able to help you succeed in whatever you may do with outsourcing. And that's what I really, really designed this show to be about, is for you. Okay, so I've covered quite a lot today, and I know that this was a very, very special show because it's the first ever Outsourcing Live podcast. It's an introduction to everything of what's to come, and I'm really, really excited to be able to share with you all the things I know about outsourcing, and it will be coming out over the podcast I'll be putting out. And if you do have any questions, you're most welcome to email me. You can send it to support@outsourcinglive.com, and I'll do my best to answer any of your questions. And if you know me by now, I do answer every single question, and I do reply back to you if you have a question. And no answer or no question is a silly question. So go, you're most welcome to send me a question about the show. You can ask me anything about outsourcing, and I'll do my best to answer it back for you. And if I can't do it, then my virtual assistants will also support me as well and find the right information for you. And that's the beautiful thing about it.
Now, if you like more resources like this one, you can find them inside Mass Outsource Mastermind, along with video tutorials and step-by-step instructions showing exactly how I use them. To get a 30-day, no-risk trial membership to Mass Outsource Mastermind, simply visit freevideoset.com. Until next time, I wish you success in your quest for outsourcing.